Hello everyone, thank you for watching. Welcome to our channel. I'm sorry that this video is very late. The Winterbourne video. I watched it at the correct time and I said that I'd put it on, and I couldn't watch it again. I needed to watch it again to make like notes and write down what I've got to do a bit of research on and stuff to talk to you guys, and I can't watch it again. Just as fair warning to everyone, I'll be describing what happened, not in like vast amounts of detail, but I will be telling you some of the things that happened, some of the abuse that occurred, some of the things that were going on, but I won't be showing any graphic images, no graphic videos, anything like that on here. The whole point of this exercise is to actually kind of it's a way to help people understand what's actually going on, what's happened, without them having to see that. Because at the time, in 2011, I had no association with special needs or autism whatsoever. If I'm really honest, I actually didn't know what autism was properly. But I remember seeing it in the papers, I remember seeing it on social media, I remember it being a huge thing, but I couldn't watch it. And I think a lot of people say that, a lot of people are the same, oh, I know about it, but I can't watch it, I can't watch that, I can't see that kind of thing. And I was the same with all of the others, really. It's not something that you want to subject yourself to, is it? It's awful, but this one, guys, this one's just, I'm kind of torn between what I was saying in the last video, where saying I can sit here and talk to you about it all day, but you've got to see it. The only way you can know, really understand what went on and what happened, is to actually see it. But then the other part, there's another part of me that I have to be really honest with you and tell you I could not watch it again. I sat watching it with tears streaming down my face, thinking about my own kids, and just thinking, God, why would anybody do that? And as I go into more detail, I'm sure you'll begin to understand why. As I said earlier on, there's no graphic images in this, so you'll be able to understand maybe a bit closer the details of what happened without actually having to see it on the screen. If you are able, if you do feel able to go and watch it, then do so. The Panorama programme is still available online, but I think I've said enough on that really for you to understand that, like, it's up to you. I understand if you can't watch it. This one in particular, I've been dreaming about it, it's been on my mind, I'll get started anyway, and I'll start to go through the details. I will be looking down a lot in this video because I've got my notes written down here, and I actually just like went through some articles online and Wikipedia and stuff and found the details out, so as I didn't have to watch it again. I'll put the photos of the culprits up, because as you know, I like to make sure that they don't miss out on their 5 minutes of fame. I'll put a photo of the place up, and I'll put various other like photos up, but none of them show abuse or anything like that. So there's nothing to be afraid of seeing on here. But just to give you fair warning, I will be describing the abuse. So here we go. So Winterbourne View was a private hospital. It was in Hambrook, South Gloucestershire, and it was owned by a company called Castleback. The Panorama investigation was actually broadcast on the TV in 2011. The actual hospital had obviously been in operation by then for quite some time, and I do want you to keep in mind, which is one of the thoughts that I had when I was looking into it, it was just that this was just 6 weeks of one undercover reporter in there. that this was just footage from one person over 6 weeks. Heaven above only knows what else went on, how long it had gone on for, how many people saw it and didn't say anything, how many times it was reported and people tried to say something and were just shut down, which is actually absolutely, in this case, is just absolutely appalling and disgusting. It went on for much, much longer than it needed to. So the footage shows staff repeatedly, harshly and roughly restraining patients under chairs. These are all, I think they were teenagers with learning difficulties, various autism learning difficulties, different conditions. And they were all being held in a secure unit. At one point, when a guy's holding a young lady under a chair, she's lying on the floor and he's got this chair over her. And this other guy comes along and like drops his knees onto her legs behind him, because I don't know, he must have been like part of this guy's fan club or something. It was just pathetic. And the guy doing it was saying to him, "Oh, you need to be really careful, because last time I got the chair leg stuck on her skin and it left a really bad mark." And he's obviously worrying about being discovered, like more so than the actual harm that he'd done to her. But I mean, even if your kids are renty, or if you've got elderly relatives, anyone, if you know a single person on this earth who's vulnerable, just let that sink in for a minute. They were also seeing the same young lady, actually, they put her in a cold shower. This is one of the worst bits to watch. They put her in a cold shower, and then they put her outside when it was almost freezing, until she was shaking so much that she looked like she was having a fit. And then later, they brought her in then. And then later that same day, they soaked her again and they put a fan on her to make her really cold again. They poured, they poured mouthwash into her eyes. This was all in one day. One person, one day. Anyway, they were also seen, patients are seen screaming and shaking. One patient was seen trying to jump out of a second floor window to try and escape the torment. At one point, a member of staff is seen repeatedly punching a young man in the head until he can say ding ding to stop him. Let me just have a little look what else. Members of staff were seen also pulling hair, repeatedly poking patients in the eyes, using various forms of abusive restraint, verbal abuse, psychological abuse. The psychologist who was actually involved in the programme and watching the footage described it as torture. It was torture. It definitely was torture. It was just awful. Usually, I know I said this in the last video, but I wanted to just go over it again because you might not have seen that last video. Usually those who are held in a hospital are held under the Mental Health Act, so they're sectioned. In those circumstances, it's very difficult to get them out. It's not just a case of deciding you want to move them, you've more or less then lost control of what's happening. So, in my opinion, and let me really stress that because I don't want to get sued or anything. In my opinion, I think oftentimes people are sectioned, vulnerable people with learning difficulties are sectioned and held under the section because the cost of their care moves from the local authority where they live to the NHS. So that's a huge amount of money. If they are released from one of these places and put back into like care in the community, then the responsibility to pay for that would go back to the local authority, so the council where they live. Just putting that out there, it's just my opinion. I personally believe that that's a factor. Now, when the programme was aired on the TV, then Prime Minister David Cameron said that he was appalled by the abuse that had occurred. I can never just do one, can I, without having to stumble over my words. David Cameron said that he was absolutely disgusted and appalled by the vast abuse that had been uncovered. The Daily Mail said, without the investigation by the BBC's Panorama giving huge coverage in the Mail, the abuse of patients at Winterbourne View might be continuing to this day. That is absolutely true. A great many people had tried to intervene and tried to bring it to the attention of various different authorities and were ignored time and again. As it is, the Secure Hospital and 2 other care homes have been shut down, 11 guilty staff have been brought to justice, and a devastating report now exposes the serial failings of the local NHS, police and health watchdogs. For the last year, the Leveson inquiry has focused relentlessly on failings of the media. Never let it be forgotten how much this country owes in the fight against cruelty and corruption to its free press. The Daily Telegraph said, it's impossible to read the details of what went on at Winterbourne View Care Home for the severely disabled in Gloucestershire without feeling repelled. In the wake of the expose from the BBC's Panorama, 11 members of staff were convicted of almost 40 charges of neglect and ill treatment of those in their care. Now, as a result of the programme, the CQC, which is the Quality Care Commission, that's basically the body that is responsible for ensuring that care quality commission, so they're responsible for ensuring that correct procedures are followed, that correct trainings, it basically overseeing the whole thing, making sure that everything's okay, that there's no abuse going on and all of that kind of thing. As a result of the programme, the CQC also inspected 132 institutions in a serious case review was commissioned. Some of the roughly 10 local and national inquiries were carried out to examine what went wrong, including one by NHS South West, which was the first to be published and list many of the others. The head of the Care Quality Commission resigned ahead of a critical government report in which Winterbourne View was cited. MENCAP published a report warning that similar abuse could be going on elsewhere and calling for the closure of all large institutions far from people's families. Now, the closure of these places was promised, that was 9 years ago. As things stand, there are over 2,000 patients still held. And we don't really know what's going on. There's still not much more protection. And there's certainly not more rights for families, not only to keep their loved ones close, because usually, which I also regard as highly suspicious, but that is just my opinion again, usually the person will be moved a long distance from their home. So when their family or whoever wants to go and see them, it can be like up to a 4 or 5 hour round trip for them. And so it can be longer than that. Some people have had to, don't drive and have had to travel on 3 and 4 different trains and from one end of the country to the other to see their loved ones and stuff. So it sort of keeps the family at a distance, really, I suppose, doesn't it? There are a great number. You just go on Facebook and look at the amount of people who are either trying to get their loved one out of one of these places and have been for years, or who have finally succeeded after a long period of time, and the damage done is just absolutely immeasurable, absolutely immeasurable. It's still a thing, it's still a problem today. That's why I'm doing this video. This may well have been back in 2011, but nowhere near enough has changed since then. Anyway, the CQC did a nationwide check on facilities owned by the same company, Castleback Care, and as a result, 3 more institutions were closed. The CQC reported a systematic failure to protect people or to investigate allegations of abuse, and said that Castleback Care had misled the health watchdog. Now, I don't dare say that they did. However, it was reported on numerous occasions, which I'll go into more a bit later, but it was reported a lot. It wasn't just one person complained and Castleback swept it to one side and that was it, it went. How somebody didn't know something was very wrong there is absolutely beyond belief. So, people were prosecuted as a result of the programme. The people who were caught on film abusing vulnerable people were prosecuted. 11 people pleaded guilty to criminal offences of neglect and abuse as a result of evidence from undercover care, and 6 of them were jailed. Immediately after the 11th person pleaded guilty, the serious case review was published, revealing hundreds of previous incidents at the hospital and missed warnings. Don't think I need to say any more than that, do I? So, to name those who were convicted, the main culprit, in my opinion, from what I saw from that video, was a guy called Wayne Rogers. He seemed to be the ringleader of the whole thing, but honestly, the thing that just hurts you the most and really makes you just doubt the human race is how people... I can understand why people who are that way inclined and have got something wrong with them, because these people obviously are mentally ill. There is something wrong with them. They're the same as like rapists and killers and God knows what else. There's something wrong with them. They're sick in the mind and that's what makes them do it. And I can understand why these people, they do make a beeline for schools and particularly these care facilities, because they are so horribly under-monitored and under-supervised is shocking. I can see how like 1 or 2 could creep in, but you've got 11 people who were prosecuted here. God only knows how many others who saw things or whatever. I can't understand how this happened. Don't understand how that kind of abuse went on, and people who even just like onlookers. I know people reported it and stuff like that, but how did nobody stop them? How did nobody confront them? How did not one person, when that guy is sitting on a chair on top of that girl, how was there not one person who said, what on God's green earth do you think you're doing? Move. I mean, to me, do you know, if you were to go, say if I was to go into that job, say I started that job tomorrow, and I was one of these really horrible, evil people who wanted to like do wrong things, you would think it would be secretive. You'd think they'd be doing it like at the corners where no one was looking and hoping no one was going to see. For them to be all grouped together and in it together, it just absolutely blows my mind. How did they even, like, who's the first person who dared to like do something wrong, and then the others all went along with it? They were just totally uninhibited. It's unreal. It absolutely begs belief. It just... I suppose to anybody who is not that way inclined and hasn't got something seriously wrong with them where they're sick in the head, it's impossible to understand. It's the same as trying to understand why somebody commits a rape. It's the same as trying to understand why somebody commits child abuse. But there were so many of them. Anyway, Kelvin 4, Michael Ezenagu. I hope I've pronounced that right. I wouldn't like him to like Mrs. Little Pocket of Fame. Neil Ferguson, Sukalingan Apu, Wayne Rogers, who we spoke about earlier on, Alison Dove, Charlotte Cotterill, Danny Brake, Graham Doyle, Holly Draper and Jason Gardner. One of the guys, after he came out of the courtroom, after he'd been sentenced, he didn't go to jail, and he came out of the court and he actually had the cheek to stand there and speak to the media, and that his words were, it's very intense in there, we do 12-hour shifts. He said that like it was an excuse. Like, people are going to go, I totally get it. No, if you're working 12 hours, that's absolutely a reason why you torture a vulnerable person. I mean, I don't know about you guys, any others of you out there who've got children with additional needs. I'm pulling, flipping heck, I think the longest I've pulled is about a 36-hour shift at one time. I don't know what he was thinking. I don't know what he was thinking. That's all I can say about that. Well, I could say a lot more, but just I can't say anything else without using really obscene language, so I'm not going to. Now, in the report published by the CQC, that's the Care Quality Commission, who are supposed to oversee care in the UK. Doing a great job, guys. Published as soon as the final conviction was announced, they published the report. It just, I mean, it goes on and on, but it says here, the report concludes that there was systematic failure to protect people or to investigate allegations of abuse. The provider had failed in its legal duty to notify the Care Quality Commission of serious incidents, including injuries to patients or occasions where they had gone missing. Inspectors who visited Winterbourne View considered taking urgent action to close the centre, but decided that it was in the best interest of the patients to allow the NHS and local authority commissioners further time to find alternative placements. CQC ensured that there would be an immediate stop on admissions and that extra staff would be brought in to protect the patients until they could be moved. When they were satisfied that those arrangements were in place, CQC took enforcement action to remove the registration of Winterbourne View. The legal process to close a location, the hospital closed in June. Of the failings that they found in their inspection, the managers did not ensure that major incidents were reported to the Care Quality Commission as required. Planning and delivery of care did not meet people's individual needs. They did not have robust systems to assess and monitor the quality of services. They did not identify and manage the risks relating to the health, welfare and safety of the patients. They had not responded to or considered complaints and views of people about the service. Investigations into the conduct of staff were not robust and had not safeguarded people. They did not take reasonable steps to identify the possibility of abuse and prevent it before it occurred. They did not respond appropriately to allegations of abuse. They did not have arrangements in place to protect the people against unlawful or excessive use of restraint. They did not operate effective recruitment procedures or take appropriate steps in relation to persons who were not fit to work in care settings. They failed in their responsibilities to provide appropriate training and supervision to staff. Amanda Sherlock, CQC's Director of Operations, said, "This report is a damning indictment of the regime at Winterbourne and its systematic failings to protect vulnerable people in its care. It is now clear that the problems at Winterbourne View were far worse than they were initially indicated by the whistleblower. He has stated that he was not aware of the level of abuse until he saw the footage from the secret filming. We now know that the provider had effectively misled us by not keeping us informed about incidents as required by law. Had we been told about all of these things, we could have taken action earlier. We will now consider whether it would be appropriate to take further legal action." In response to their findings, CQC undertook a review of all Castleback services. Full details of the inspection of 23 locations would be published later. A review of learning disability services involving the inspection of 150 services with learning disabilities which have the same or similar characteristics as Winterbourne View. An internal management review. The first stage of CQC's internal management review of our actions in relation to Winterbourne View is complete. The final report will make recommendations relating to how CQC ensures that safeguarding alerts and whistleblowing information were handled. A serious case review. CQC's internal report will feed into a serious case review being led by an independent chair, Margaret Flynn, which will examine the role of all responsible agencies. Now, Paul Brosnan, the chairman of Castlebeck, he actually resigned before the publication was published, which I'm not remotely surprised by, to be quite honest with you. Now, given all of that information about the various different reports and promises that were made and things like that, our government said this must never happen again. All sorts of different legislations and things were going to be put into place. Everybody was going to be moved out into care in the community. And they were aiming to close all ATUs. As things stand at the moment, there are still over 2,000 people held in ATUs under the Mental Health Act. And the Winterbourne Scandal, which was frighteningly similar, was very recent. So 8 years later, it is still going on. And the thing that we really have to think of and remember here, more so than anything else, in my opinion, is that it could still be happening out there. It most likely is still happening out there at various different places. These hospitals, not only the hospitals, but any kind of like care environment, really, care of old people, care of those with mental illnesses, care of vulnerable children, you know, we could go on and on and on, but just the overall care practice in the UK is not being watched closely enough. It is not being checked closely enough. Those kinds of places where vulnerable people are held and kept, whether it's a special needs school, whether it's an old people's home, whether it's an ATU, whether it's a mental health hospital, whatever it is, they need cameras. There should be CCTV absolutely everywhere, and that should be regularly monitored and checked. And it is as simple as that, because it's unacceptable. It's just so totally and utterly unacceptable that there's not really any words to even describe it. It's shocking, it's disgusting, it's appalling, and the average person on the street can't actually believe that another person would do that, but there were 11 people prosecuted for this. And this abuse was just absolutely unbearable to watch. And what we absolutely have to keep in mind, given the fact that it's still going on most likely out there, is that it was unbearable to watch. Those people were living it. Some of them had been in there for years. And no one knew. They couldn't tell anyone, no one knew. They were just living this life of torture and abuse every day. I'm not all right with that, and I am prepared to stand up and say that I'm not all right with that. That something needs to change, and I know money's tight, and I know the NHS is cash strapped, I know that the education section is cash strapped, I know that the entire country is cash strapped, but absolutely it costs money to put these extra precautions in place for these people. But until those changes are made, until those patients are released and given adequate care to be integrated into their community again, they need some protection. They absolutely need and deserve some protection, and that money just has to come from somewhere, because it will be happening. It's probably happening as I'm sitting here saying this to you. There's probably something untoward happening in some sort of care environment somewhere across this country. You would think that there would be enough decent people around to whistleblow and stop that, but the whistleblowing and the good people trying to stop it didn't work. A 4-page email from Mr. Bryan details his concerns about the confrontational and aggressive approach of the staff. The email, which has been since handed to the police, named several staff members who were later filmed abusing patients by Panorama. He wrote, certain established staff members seem to relish in restraint procedures. I have witnessed some smiles on their faces as they restrain people. I see scant regard for the person's feelings while they are being held, and definitely no empathy. When his managers failed to address his concerns, Mr. Bryan resigned. He complained to the Care Quality Commission in December, stating that serious abuse was taking place at Winterbourne and asking it to get in touch with him. He received no response other than 2 automated emails. That's from the Care Quality Commission in the UK. The Care Quality Commission should have acted, he said. This was a care home with a culture of restraint and archaic service run by amateurs. I have never seen anything like this in my 35 years of experience. If they had listened to what I was saying, then this abuse could have been stopped. So that gentleman then went on, he was actually featured in the Panorama programme as the whistleblower who had actually stepped up and tried to stop it. He quit because he just couldn't work there, it was just too awful. And you hear him speak on the programme about how awful it was, and it's just kind of absolutely infuriating to know that complaints are made, the correct people were told, and absolutely nothing was done. Anyway, on that note, I think that we've stuck on this subject for long enough. Please do give the video a share, anywhere. Share, comment, anything. But just please do try and share it far and wide, and let's just try and see if we can just raise a little bit more awareness, and let's see if we can give these people who are still struggling with this a little bit of a handout. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please do give the video a like down below. Please do hit the subscribe button so as you can see our future videos, and we look forward to seeing you again in the next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.